Luís Inácio Lula da Silva. President Lula da Silva was officially sworn in as the current president of Brazil in early January this year, having served in this capacity previously as Brazil's 35th president. The call and the discussions cement the long-standing friendship and cooperation between the two states. South Africa and Brazil share a deep strategic partnership and bilateral, interregional, and multilateral level in pursuit of the advancement of the development agenda of the South. President Ramaphosa looks forward to hosting President Lula da Silva later this year during the BRICS summit, wherein South Africa will assume the chairship of the group. The President is scheduled to provide oral replies to questions in the National Assembly in Cape Town on Thursday, the 9th of March, for the first term of 2023. Among the key issues that the President is expected to respond to, he will outline South Africa's strategic areas of focus and its role as the 2023 BRICS chair, as I've mentioned earlier. South Africa will be hosting the summit later this year. The President is also expected to address matters concerning the fight against crime, the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, as well as the Expropriation Bill. On the 10th of March 2023, the President will be part of the Nelson Mandela Youth Dialogue in Gqeberha, where the announcement of Fellowship for Outstanding Young African Leaders will be made. The President requested the NYDA to develop a concept for a Pan-African youth dialogue called the Nelson Mandela Youth Dialogue. The event is a result of the development of the concept with an intended outcome of a program that will benefit African youth in line with South Africa's foreign policy. On Tuesday, the 14th of March, the President will chair the Presidential Working Group on Disability at the Union Buildings. This engagement underscores government's commitment towards the full empowerment of people with disabilities by identifying interventions that will change the lives of people living with disabilities for the better. On that same day, the President will receive letters of credence from foreign heads of mission who have arrived in South Africa to serve in diplomatic missions in the country, and that ceremony will take place on Tuesday the 14th in the afternoon. So that concludes the program. And I'll open the floor to questions. We'll start at the back with Aviwe Mdila from ENCA.
Thank you, Aviwe from ENCA. Maybe can we get a response on the Constitutional Court judgment that has dismissed the application of the President? I mean, those are serious cases to answer to the Palapala matter, and it said that he may have violated his oath of office. We know Parliament voted against adopting the inquiry in Parliament, but shouldn't the President then answer to the inquiry or let the inquiry take place? And also, can we get an update on when we expect the announcement of the Minister of Electricity, given that this was pronounced out SONA about a month ago, and we in deep stages of load shedding, would expect that announcement be prioritized by the President?
Okay, Aviwe. On the Constitutional Court judgment, we just need to make sure that we don't mix issues. That judgment is what I will call, deals with what I will call a procedural matter with respect to the President seeking direct access to the Constitutional Court. That judgment does not pronounce on the merits of the case. So you are now going into the actual substance of the matter. That judgment just says there is no case for the ConCourt to be petitioned directly. And I think we should put that into context and understand it. I've heard some of your colleagues saying it's a blow to the President. It's not a blow to the President. What will happen now, the legal team will convene and map the way forward and consider the options going forward. But it's not necessarily a blow, and it's not a judgment on the substance and merits of the case. It's just a procedural issue, insofar as whether the President was correct in petitioning the ConCourt directly. Our view is that he was correct in doing so, because the matter concerned a report that was seized with the conduct of the President, and our view was that the ConCourt was the right court to hear the matter. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that and we don't confuse issues. When is the President going to announce the Minister of Electricity? You know everywhere that there are vacancies in Cabinet. We also now have a vacancy in the role of a Deputy President. And so there is a sense of agency that the President fills those vacancies as soon as possible. So in a matter of days, that announcement will be made. So I will say to you, be on standby and look out for my advisory alerting you to the announcement. Next question. Zianda.
Thank you very much. It's Zianda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. Is the President at all concerned about the allegations that have been brought by former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter, especially the part that he speaks about the two cabinet ministers who've either been party to or aware of the corruption at the power utility? And if so, will this be taken into consideration before his cabinet reshuffle? Because for all we know, he's got people in cabinet who are involved in actually escalating the energy crisis in the country. The second question I have is that it's been exactly 20 days since the President announced that state of disaster. I know yesterday there was a special cabinet, but perhaps, I mean, you've just said now that, the announcement will be made in a matter of days, but I mean, what's the President's understanding of the word immediate and urgent? I mean, it's almost a month now. Does this show a caring government? And then just lastly, still on the Section 89 panel report, does the President agree then with the notion that this move that is made directly, trying to seek direct access to the ConCourt, and you've just said now that they haven't dealt with the merits of the case, that he is indeed taking Parliament to court? Thanks.
Okay, all right, Zianda. Let's start with your first question. We all know that it's been public knowledge that Eskom has been on the grip of criminal syndicates operating inside and outside of Eskom. That's public knowledge. The President has been on record expressing his concern about corruption at Eskom and other criminality that's taking place at Eskom in the form of diluted quality coal, theft of spares, sabotage, and fraud and corruption. That's on record. What Andre has said is nothing new to the extent that we know that there's corruption at Eskom. More importantly, government has responded to that level of criminality that exists within Eskom through a multidisciplinary task team that has been deployed to Eskom through the net joints. And that team includes pretty much all law enforcement agencies, including state security. It includes agencies such as SARS, and they are dealing with every aspect of wrongdoing taking place at Eskom. Does the President have the names of these alleged politicians involved in corruption at Eskom? No, he does not. Will he factor that in his cabinet reshuffle? No, he can't, because he does not have that information. What the President has said is that Mr. de Ruyter should approach law enforcement agencies with all the evidence and all the information that he has. He has a duty to do so. He had that duty to provide that information to law enforcement agencies. As the CEO of Eskom, the President has also been on record to say we now have law enforcement agencies that have been empowered to operate without any fear or favor. We know we come from an era where some of these law enforcement agencies were ameliorated of skills, were disempowered in so many ways. That has changed. They now operate independently. They now investigate without any fear or favor. So anybody who has any information that could assist in curbing the levels of corruption at Eskom is urged to take that information to law enforcement agencies so that it can be fully investigated. The President cannot respond to rumors and generic suggestions around individuals, who he is not even aware of. What he has done is to instruct that law enforcement agencies descend upon Eskom and work towards cleaning out all forms of criminality at Eskom. Your second question was with respect to the appointment, the appointment of the electricity minister, right?
What does the President understand?
Oh, to be
urgent and
okay.
immediate? It's 20 days since the State of the Nation address.
So the President has been seized with the electricity crisis for quite some time now. Last year, July, he announced the Energy Action Plan. What that means, over and above announcing the Energy Action Plan, he set up the NECOM structure, which he chairs at a political leadership level, and it's chaired by DG Baleni at a technical workstream level. What is important for us to appreciate here is that the President has been seized with resolving the electricity crisis. As a government, we are seized with resolving issues around Eskom, at the same time seeing to it that we have a sustainable, energy secured future. So the work around resolving the electricity crisis is not going to start when the Minister of Electricity is appointed. That work is ongoing. That work is ongoing on an accelerated and urgent basis. The regulations around the state of disaster have been published. All the affected departments now know what they need to do. All relevant parties in this regard know what they need to do, and they have been working on this crisis. So I don't think because the electricity minister has not been appointed, we can then make a suggestion that the President does not appreciate the urgency of the situation. He does. What he has done is to bring in additional elements and additional layers around resolving this crisis, and in some way accelerate the focus so that we can get to a point where we reduce the severity of load shedding, Eskom fixes its plans, and we can get more megawatts onto the grid. Was there a third question from
Yes.
Zanda?
The President's basically taking Parliament to court.
Okay, so no, the President is not taking Parliament to court. The President petitioned the Constitutional Court to review the Section 89 report. That's what the President did. The assertion around taking Parliament to court was a political suggestion by some, which has no merit whatsoever. The President is, and it's quite important that we do get clarification around how these processes are managed in future. And so that's important not only for the President, but also for the future stability of the office of the President, that report is reviewed. We know now, Parliament rejected that report for the same reasons that the President has taken the report on review. So we will reject the assertion that the President is taking Parliament to court. No, he's taking a flawed report on review. Amanda?
Mr. Magwenya, it's Amanda Koza from the Sunday Times. Just to follow up on my colleague's matter of urgency, can you tell us exactly what's taking the President so long to make the announcement to reshuffle his cabinet? Why is it taking so long?
Well, look, Amanda, it's an exercise in a constitutionally empowered prerogative, right? The President has to apply his mind. The appointment of cabinet members and the management of cabinet is not something that you can conduct in haste. It's not something that you can do in a rush. It's something that has to be carefully considered because you have to look at the stability of government. You have to look at the programs that are already underway. There are just so many layers of complexity and sensitivity that have to be looked at. So I'm not quite sure that he will agree with the fact that it has taken long because the work of government has continued. Whether it be the electricity crisis or other areas of government. So the fact that you still have vacancies in cabinet has not hindered the work of government, and the work of government has not been undermined in any shape or form. However, the President is aware that he has to fill the vacancies. Those vacancies will be filled. The new Minister of Electricity will be announced. And the work of government will continue. So the length of time it has taken for him to apply his mind, consult if he needs to consult, and make his decision has had no direct bearing whatsoever to the work of government. That is not to say it's not important. It is important going forward in terms of accelerating various aspects of the work of government. Yes, sir.
Hi, Simon Sonnekes from Rapport newspaper. Two questions. Just firstly, on also following on my colleagues about the electricity minister. When President Ramaphosa took office in 2019, he said that he would be cutting down on cabinet members. Now we are seeing another one added. Just his thoughts on, does this mean that the ministers of mining and public enterprises, has he lost faith in them running the Eskom side of things? And then second question being the Electoral Act, as far as we know, or as if I remember correctly, the deadline to sign it was yesterday. Has he signed it as yet? Can you confirm?
Sorry, the deadline to sign?
The Electoral Act.
Deadline to who?
Not deadline, sorry, but has he signed the Electoral Act? Sorry, that rather not the deadline per se.
Okay. Your first question was following up on Amanda's question around the. You're talking about the potential expansion of cabinet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the President has indicated that the Ministry of Electricity is going to be as relevant to the extent that we still have these severe stages of load shedding, and to the extent that we will still have a crisis that we need to manage. That is not going to be a permanent cabinet position. It's a crisis-induced position, if you like, and the President is looking for dedicated, high-level political leadership of that crisis. So we can't look at it as a luxurious expansion of cabinet. That's the first point. The second point, the President did announce that National Treasury, together with the Presidency, will be managing a process that will look at rationalizing ministries. So that process is underway. When it reaches significant milestones, there will be some form of reporting, but the commitment to look at the size of government, particularly cabinet, remains, and that commitment is now being actioned with the work that the Presidents and the National Treasury are doing. Okay? Are you covered? Are you happy?
Yeah. Does that mean he's going to cut with the coming reshuffle, and then just the thing about the Electoral Act?
I'm saying there is a process. It's a 2-3 year process to look at rationalizing the size of cabinet. So he can't preempt that process now. We need to have that process thoroughly, conducted. There's so many things that you need to look at. What I'm trying to say to you is that commitment remains, and that commitment is now being actioned because teams have been committed to work on that brief, and that brief will be delivered on.
Aviwa? It's just a bit concerning to hear that the president is merely asking the CEO to go to the authorities on the information he's divulged, especially given that these ministers are still in cabinet. The very same ministers that told people to eat a little, to allow corruption to happen at Eskom, which is failing the country. Wouldn't the president want to have a more active role and why is he not speaking to the CEO and finding out who these exact ministers are, especially at a time where he's about to reshuffle the cabinet, and chances are those very ministers, if the allegations are true, will be in the cabinet. And secondly, what of the ministers and people in cabinet that have been fingered in the state capture report? Will the president still consider them to be part of cabinet?
So you'll be aware that some of the ministers that were mentioned in the state capture report have taken the report on review. So that process needs to be allowed to run its course. On your first question, though, it's a very simple exercise. You have information and evidence. You go to the police station, you open a case, and the police will take it from there. Now, in this case, I can even safely speculate that once you've opened a case at a police station, the likes of the Hawks and other specialized units will descend upon that case and commence with investigations. Why do we need to have back and forth conversations about individuals? Rather subject the information and the evidence to competent bodies that can investigate properly. So you give the president a name of a minister that you allege to be involved in corruption, then what? What does it do? He cannot act on that information that has not been corroborated, where there's no case behind that information. Then what happens? So, we know of cases where individuals have gone to police stations, opened cases, received case numbers. Within a week or so, the Hawks took over those cases or a particular case and investigated those cases. So I'm struggling to understand what is the difficulty with Mr. Derrida going to a police station and saying, I'm here to report a crime, and providing a statement to the police about that crime, including names and all the details that he has in his possession. Then the police can take up the matter. If the police are not dealing with that matter when the matter has been reported, then the president will have a reason to say to the Minister of Police, can that matter be attended to? But right now, the president is being expected to enter into a conversation about an allegation involving an individual. Then what? He's not a policeman. He's not an investigative body. We have competent investigative bodies that operate without any fear or favor or any political interference for that matter. Why not go to them? I'll take the question here, then I'll come back to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much. Franz Machate from Progressive Independent News Agency. I must first apologize for missing the first part of this. Just to take on a viewer's question and maybe also to add on what you were just asked back in responding to Aviwe. The president, as the political leader, is he not interested to know what is happening, particularly the fact that government is the one that appoints these CEOs, and if there are allegations in the department, for example, the department that you lead, before it even goes to police, as a leader in that particular department, so as the president, you will be interested. So why is he not interested to know that?
The President is more than interested to see to it that corruption is eradicated at Eskom. The President is more than interested to see to it that we eradicate corruption in all state institutions and we eradicate corruption completely in our society. That includes the private sector. He has a vested interest there. The President, in that regard, has ensured that we have fully empowered law enforcement agencies that can operate without any interference whatsoever. Those agencies have revived leadership that is investigating all sorts of cases around corruption. The President is interested in seeing to it that cases are investigated, but to expect the President to engage in a rumor or speculation is not really reasonable and a good use of his time. What needs to happen here, information must be provided to the relevant authorities, and then investigations must ensue. Those investigations, or the outcome rather of those investigations, will then inform what action the President takes. You had asked a question about the Electoral Amendment Bill, yes. Okay, so I remembered. Okay, so the court set deadline was for Parliament to pass the bill. It was not for the President to sign the bill. The President, in terms of Section 79 of the Constitution, is empowered to assent to bills, but more importantly, he must fully satisfy himself about, one, the substance of that bill with respect to its constitutionality, secondly, about the process, and that will include the manner in which the consultation process was undertaken, etc. So the President will be processing that bill in those two aspects. But the deadline was not for the President to sign the bill, it was for Parliament to pass the bill. You cannot give the President a deadline to sign the bill when he has not applied himself as per the constitutional provisions that that empowers him to assent to the bill, but more importantly, to satisfy himself on the substance of the bill and ensure that that bill is in line with the Constitution. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Amanda?
Sir, could you please give us an update on the appointment of the SABC board? The last time we spoke to you, you had indicated to us that the President was going to do that soon. Time has passed and now he's been taken to court, so could you give us an update on that matter?
Yeah, no, Amanda, it's really unfortunate and regrettable that the appointment of the SABC board has been delayed to this extent, even resulting to interested parties taking the President to court. I think we've related this before. When the President received the candidates shortlist on the 20th of December, there were a number of issues that required clarification on the side of Parliament with respect to what was handed to the President. Unfortunately, the resumes of the candidates were only handed to the President in January, somewhere between the 10th or the 13th of January. I can't remember the exact date. And so the process was already running behind schedule, if you like. It did not help that there were issues that were identified to be inconsistent with the Act. And the President could not proceed with appointing those individuals while those issues were there and had not been clarified. The other point, there were objections that we believe were sent to Parliament, and those objections were also sent to the President with respect to certain individuals. The President wanted clarification as to how those objections were dealt with. So we had those issues that we needed clarification on, and that contributed to the delay. We are hoping that those issues will be clarified fairly soon, and we can proceed, and the President can proceed with appointing the SABC board members. It's not an ideal situation for the SABC. It's a critical institution of our democracy. It is urgent that governance at the SABC is managed in accordance to the various statutory provisions, and that means there must be a board in place, and that's something the President is fully aware of. Gert.
Some serious reports have been published in overseas newspapers alleging that South Africa is on the brink of collapse and there's a civil war looming and stuff like that. I would just like to know what the President says about reports of that nature, please.
Where are those reports from?
In New Zealand, one report appeared in a New Zealand newspaper that said a major nation in Africa with 60 million inhabitants is on the brink of collapse due to the electricity crisis. And the US issued a notice to its inhabitants, to its citizens in South Africa to stock up on food and water and medical supplies. For I think 3 days, they should keep it ready, handy for 3 days.
Let me start with the US notice. It's not the first time the US Embassy has issued a notice in South Africa, and those notices have come to nothing, right? So we don't know what motivates, excuse me, we don't know what motivates, we don't know what motivates these notices and what informs these notices. They never issued with any prior consultation with our government. We see them as everybody else as they appear in the media. So it's kind of difficult to comment on them except to just reference the recent past where dramatic announcements were made that almost caused unnecessary panic, and those notices came to naught. Equally, this time around, we're not quite certain as to how they arrived at that kind of positioning and notice in this regard. But it's easy for the U.S. Embassy to just reach out either via the Department of International Relations and Cooperation or directly to the Presidency to understand the situation, as it were, or the severity of the situation, and be better informed before issuing these notices. Media reports about South Africa collapsing and a civil war looming, I don't know about that. You guys are citizens of this country. You drive in our roads. I don't know if that's the same sense that you have. Do we have an electricity problem? Of course we do. Are we working on it, and do we have a plan? Yes, we do. We have a plan on it. Do we have a functioning government that has its finger on the pulse? Absolutely, yes. Our institutions are in place from a law enforcement point of view, from key institutions of our democracy. So I will struggle to process that assertion and to understand what facts will have informed that assertion. Zianda, you had the mic, sorry.
Thanks again, Vincent. So, whilst all this politicking takes place, whether we're talking Andre de Ruyter, interviews from the Public Enterprises Minister, an impending cabinet reshuffle, I mean, from a president who chaired the war room on Eskom when he was still deputy president, for a president who actually promised that he'd end load shedding in a couple of months. You've gone to Davos and spoken about 12 to 18 months. Can you make a commitment today, as you stand there, that commitment will be met, that load shedding will be done within that time frame?
What time frame again? What time frame did you mention?
Well, the one minister said 12 months, the other said 18 months. I mean, there was also that miscommunication or different communication in and of itself is telling of what's happening behind the scenes. Perhaps you could, illuminate for us.
Let me speak on behalf of the President. The ministers who gave deadlines will speak for themselves. Zianda, there is a very firm commitment to resolve this electricity crisis. The President is fully aware of the economic impact of this severe load shedding. The President is fully aware at how this electricity crisis continues to threaten the kind of economic growth that we want to see. You will have noticed that over the last 6 months, our economy has been slowly recovering back to pre-pandemic level. And that's a very important development to acknowledge, that we're now back to those pre-pandemic levels. And what that means is that we can continue to accelerate the kind of reforms that the President has tabled to the nation and that government is seized with. And those reforms will carry us out of this period of economic stagnancy. And so if you look at the bigger picture of what's being done in terms of the economic recovery, what's being done at a NECOM level towards resolving this energy crisis, the targets in the short term, which is to reduce the severity of load shedding, the sort of medium to long-term targets around a more secure and stable sort of energy future. That talks to a very serious, honest, dedicated commitment, not only on the side of the President, but the entire government and administration that he leads. And so that cannot be doubted. Have we had challenges in arriving at some of the envisaged outcomes soon and early enough? Yes, we had. If you look at the level of criminality, for example, in and around Eskom, that cannot be resolved overnight. That's going to take time. Law enforcement agencies are working on it. The state of disaster that has been declared is another signal at the level of seriousness that government is according to this crisis. On the one hand, reducing or responding to the impact of load shedding. On the other hand, making sure that we can accelerate various processes that will get us more megawatts into the grid. So a lot has been done over the last 6 to 9 months. From the time the Energy Action Plan was announced to now, there's been a significant amount of work that has been done that points to business as unusual in government, that points to the President's push in getting us out of this electricity crisis. I see Tando Mayego has arrived. Welcome, Tando. Already she has a question. Okay, Tando.
My name is Tando Mayeko from the Business Day. So yesterday, the state of disaster regulations were gazetted, or they were gazetted earlier this week, rather. In the regulations, it directs government departments to find funds that would go towards alleviating or mitigating against load shedding in line with the gazetted regulations, right? But does this mean now we can expect perhaps a reprioritization of government departments' budgets or the entire budget itself to go towards mitigating against load shedding, similar to what we have seen during the COVID-19 state of disaster?
Yeah, Tando, there is that directive, and I think that the implementation of that directive will be informed by each of the cases that government departments have to respond to. I cannot say that there will be a universal budget reprioritization. The Minister of Finance did outline budgetary elements that are being allocated towards Eskom, insofar as the Eskom debt is concerned, for example, the work that will be done around addressing the municipal debt. So that has been taken care of. What you have now is a very focused and ring-fenced approach to specific areas that are impacted upon by this crisis. So it's not going to be a wholesale reprioritization, but it will be a reprioritization of some sort in line with the regulations.
Right, and I'm not sure if someone else has asked this, my apologies, but we've seen the Constitutional Court judgment regarding the Palapala matter and Section 89 in Parliament. What legal options does the President have now, if any?
This question has been covered.
It has?
It's been
Right.
asked, yeah. So shall I refer you to the live stream and you can get my answers from there?
Thank you.
But, in summary, Tando, just in summary, what I explained was we need to just be careful in how we contextualize the issue. The judgment was not on the merits of the case. The judgment was more on what I will call a procedural issue, insofar as whether was the President correct in petitioning the Constitutional Court directly. Our view still remains that that was a correct approach. However, we are where we are now, where the legal teams will, our legal team will convene and sort of map the way forward. That report remains flawed and needs to be challenged. That's a substantive issue, so therefore you could expect that the way forward may include a continued challenge to that report. You know that Parliament rejected that report for the same reasons that the President is taking it on review. While you guys still just figuring out your next questions, I think it's going to be important that when we look at Eskom, particularly issues of corruption at Eskom, we also reference the progress that has been made thus far in terms of some of the arrests that the Hawks have been able to make, in terms of monies that have been recovered via the SIU. I think there was a story yesterday that ABB has been instructed to pay a fine in the U.S. in this regard. There was an amount of money that was paid back to Eskom, I think about 2 billion rands, if I'm not mistaken. And so just remember that there is actually measurable progress. People are getting arrested, there are cases in court, monies are being recovered insofar as crimes that were committed at Eskom. So we shouldn't behave as if whatever information that's coming out now is the only thing that is getting us into action. We have been in action, and there has been some progress. Can more be done? Absolutely. That's why we have that multidisciplinary task team that's focused specifically on Eskom, and you look at its diverse nature that covers the full spectrum of the justice, crime prevention. That tells you the level of seriousness that we are placing on fixing Eskom insofar as criminality is concerned. Yes, sir.
I know this might be an international relations issue, but it's very questionable. Why will U.S. keep having some warnings against South Africa? What is the relationship between, or how is the relationship between the Union buildings and the White House?
It's a very positive, very warm, extremely warm relationship. The President honored President Biden's invitation last year for a working visit. And there is alignment on so many issues between South Africa and the United States. There is a great deal of partnership at a political level, trade level, even people-to-people exchange level between the two countries. I guess with these notices, what you have is what I will call administrative decisions that are made at an administration level and then they're executed. But these notices are not by any means a reflection of the relationship that South Africa has with the United States. In fact, if you reference the statement we released at the back of that bilateral meeting between President Ramaphosa and President Biden, you will have realized that there were so many issues of commonality that we agreed on. There were one or two or so issues where we hold different views, but even in amongst those issues, from a principle standpoint, fundamentally, we share the same view. We may differ in terms of how those issues are addressed. Case in point are the sanctions in Zimbabwe, for example. We've stated our view with respect to those sanctions, the sort of devastating economic effect they have on Zimbabwe, as well as the social and security impact that has on South Africa. And that's something President Biden was very sympathetic to. However, the U.S. holds a particular view in terms of those sanctions. But broadly, we have a fantastic relationship with the United States on so many fronts. Tando? Are you saying you send me a WhatsApp? I must look at it. They're asking a question. Oh yeah, we have a WhatsApp line. Takane, what is that number again, so that people can send us questions?
The number is 082 084 5566.
Okay. Just repeat it again.
082 084 5566.
Okay. You forwarded me some of the questions here, so we can go through them. First one is on the SABC board, that has been addressed. Update on the cabinet reshuffle, that has been addressed. And then the two very long questions around the UDM and others court case related to load shedding and what the president said. So I can clarify that. The Concord judgment has been addressed as well. So let me just deal with the misinterpretation of a sentence, not even the entire affidavit, of a sentence in the president's response to the UDM and others in that, let's call it a load shedding case. You cannot read a responding affidavit in isolation of the initial affidavit that was filed. And this is the unfortunate thing that has happened here, where headlines have been formulated, perceptions have been made out of reading the one end of a much broader argument. The statement that is contained in those papers responds to a specific demand by the applicants that the national government instruct municipalities to take certain action around load shedding. As the president correctly points out, national government has no constitutional powers to give such instructions to municipalities, and more importantly, contradict or diminish the stated commitment of President Ramaphosa and his administration to add load shedding as a matter of urgency. So I'll really urge that when we look at the president's affidavit, we also look at the papers that have been filed, in that case against the president and many others that are mentioned there who are in government with respect to load shedding. Then you'll have a full context as to why the president has put forward the arguments that he has. You will all be familiar with the fact that we have constitutional provisions that accord powers to the president, to national government, etc., and you cannot act outside of those constitutional parameters. Sakana, are there any other questions from the WhatsApp line?
Quite a number of questions, but some without introductions in terms of the person asking in the media house.
We need the introduction in the media house.
Okay, I hope they can send those through. I'll
Okay.
try find those that do
Sure.
have. Okay, so there's Khomotso Moema, who would like to know what would happen if Andre de Ruyter doesn't open a case or give out the name of the minister in question. The next question is from Tabiso. What happened to President Smart Cities ideology that will create millions of jobs and the fast train? He has been quiet about them this time around.
So, Tsakane, let's just stop there. Let's just stop there. So, let's deal with them. Let's deal with one or two questions at a time. So, what happens if Mr. de Ruyter decides not to fulfill his duty? It's a bit puzzling question, because you'll expect that anybody who witnesses a crime or who has information about a crime that has been committed will be very keen to provide that information to the police. So let me say it will be bizarre, at the very least, if he does not engage law enforcement agencies as he has been invited to do so, and as he understands to be the case for somebody at his level. The issue about smart cities, we have a broader commitment in terms of infrastructure investment and infrastructure development. The President made announcements in this regard during his SONA address. That work is ongoing, being spearheaded by Dr. Josienzo Ramakhuba, and updates have been provided and will continue to be provided. I think let's just focus on the principle that there is a massive amount of work that's being done around our infrastructure in rural areas, in the provision of water, in terms of roads. That work is ongoing. Next question.
There's a question that's asking, what are our plans regarding, what's government's plan regarding the EFF's planned march later this month? And then there's Michelle from Tafoni Media, who's asking what plans have been put in place to accommodate foreigners who are on ZSP permits, considering they have been given several extensions. How does South Africa intend to close the skills gap that will be left by skilled immigrants?
Okay, that last question, I'd like it referred to Home Affairs, please. With respect to what plans does government have with regards to the EFF march, the South African Constitution protects the right to protest. Those happen regularly in our country. Law enforcement agencies know how to manage those events. So there's not going to be a specific plan around a particular party. It's going to be managed in the normal course of managing various protest actions, action that takes place around the country.
We've got a question from Prince Jones Mazibuko from Independent News, who's asking what is the sentiment of banning the recycling of copper, specifically for the men on the street?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up now. I think we are done now. I think we are done now. And I think the WhatsApp line is being utilized by so many other people outside of the media fraternity. So, colleagues, I think on that note, I'm not dodging any question, but I think it's safe to say you all need to go and file, and you want to avoid traffic. So we can wrap now. Thank you so much for the engagement, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.